I want to finish today just the last few minutes of the Civil War that we didn't get to last time, and then I want to go on to Chinese immigration and the Chinese Exclusion Act, which we'll spend today and Wednesday talking about, and then on Friday it'll be show and tell with your labs on Chinese immigration. Where we left off was that with Irish support faltering after 1862, and we talked a little about the Preliminary Emancipation Proclamation that was Lincoln announcing in September of 1862 that as of January 1863, the slaves held in places that were not under Union control would be freed. Okay? So it was the Preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, but for all intents and purposes, it was the Emancipation Proclamation, which would take place a few months prior in the future. Then, in December that year, it was the fiasco at Fredericksburg, where the Irish Brigade suffered great casualties, and the perception was that this was due to foolishness and a foolishly low price put on Irish lives. And that led to, and the final straw, at least as far as the draft rights were concerned, was March of '63 with conscription. This is a new National Enrollment Act, as it was called, and the result then was the draft riot. We talked first. The Enrollment Act, as I think I mentioned, didn't change things that much. Enrollment, there really was effectively a draft. The Union always called it volunteers, but the federal government set out quotas for each state. The states divided them among the counties, and the counties offered bounties or whatever it took to get people to volunteer. And if they couldn't, they couldn't get enough volunteers that way, then they would draft. This just nationalized the process, so that if enough volunteers didn't show up, the federal government would run the draft, and that was mostly an anti-corruption measure. Nonetheless, it was politically a big deal. Horatio Seymour, the governor of New York, was very much against the draft, and so he and others made lots of noises about it. They considered it to be unfair to whites because, in light of the Emancipation Proclamation, the idea, at least according to people like Horatio Seymour, was that whites would have to go and fight in a war in order to free blacks, who would then come north and take their jobs and marry their daughters. It was viewed as unfair to working men, it was claimed unfair to the poor, because under the rules of the Enrollment Act and the way that recruitment was done, you could pay $300 to not be drafted. If your number came up, $300 would get you out of it. You could also hire replacements, presumably for less than that price. And that price fluctuated a little bit. I think it went up a little towards the end of the war. But there was a price that you could pay to get out of the draft, and you pay somebody else to do it. About 9.6% of the Union Army were, in fact, substitutes, which is perhaps not that high a number. In any case, after when the Enrollment Act came into place, and they started drafting, about a third of draftees did not show up, and most of those were from counties that were very heavily Catholic. So there was a sense that the Irish were the ones who were very much against the enrollment. And they showed it in New York on July 4th of 1863 by going on a rampage. And it was noted, it was very obvious at the time, that the rampage was very much focused on blacks. They were hanged, they were drowned, and there was even an attack on a Negro orphan asylum, which seems a particularly cheap shot. In the end, by July 15th, troops that were fresh from their victory at Gettysburg went on at exactly the same time. It was July 3rd and July 4th. That was the high water mark of the South. The Lee got into Pennsylvania. That was as far as he got. It was stopped and turned around. That was a great Union victory because the cost to Lee was very high. So troops marched from Gettysburg to put down this riot. It took 5 brigades, and about a day to restore order to New York. In the end, the draft law was enforced in New York, but Lincoln cut New York City's quota by 1/2, and the mayor actually sold bonds. The city government was controlled at this time by Tammany Hall, by Tweed, the famous boss Tweed, and they sold bonds to pay for substitutes or for commutation for working men. So it was perhaps not really such a great victory. This cartoon, which is from 1868, shows Horatio Seymour over here. The guy with the CSA belt is Jefferson Davis, and that's an Irish guy on the left. Seymour ran for president, or vice president, I guess, in 1868 against Ulysses S. Grant. I'm sure he was vice president. I guess he was running for president. In any case, he lost. And this was the kind of campaigning that was typical. This whole explains that the Republicans were very much in control after the Civil War, as you might expect. So the Democrats were tarred with this, with having been at least somewhat sympathetic to the South. So this kind of campaign tactic is called waving the bloody shirt. This is just a little nativism thrown in as well. The bloody shirt refers to, you guys were on the wrong side of the Civil War, and that turns out to be an important part of the Chinese story that they'll tell in a moment. In any case, so note what it says on the Irish guy's shillelagh there. Can you read that? It says vote. Vote. Okay, any questions about this, sir? Yes, there's a black man, exactly. This is after the Civil War. Okay. All right, let's then start with another pleasant image. Moving then onto the Chinese story. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the Chinese before, and you're, of course, up to your eyeballs in it for the lab. The reason that we talk about the Chinese, even though they're a relatively small segment of the population, especially compared to the Irish migration, Chinese migration is rather small, but the point is they're very significant on the West Coast, and the West Coast is very significant to us. So we'll give them a little disproportionate amount of time, but also because they are some early adopters. There are two things about the Chinese migration that telegraph something about the future, sort of foreshadow the story for Europeans, and one of them is that they're labor migrants. As we talked about, they come more for work. They're not coming with their intention of relocating, so they tend to come overwhelmingly as males. You've seen that already in the data for Lab 2. And the other thing is that they're the first group that is excluded, the first group to be excluded from the right to immigrate based solely on an ethnic criterion. So the main points then of the lecture today, and this is really will be the main points for the lecture today and Wednesday, and that is it's not just anti-Catholicism anymore. Recall that nativism up until at least up until this period, had been largely, almost exclusively, really an anti-Catholic sort of thing. The Know-Nothings were really more anti-Catholic in a lot of ways than they were anti-immigrant. You even saw that in places like Indiana, they would accept Protestant immigrants. It's also not just about longer waiting times for citizenship. That, again, was the Know-Nothing platform. Know-Nothing still saw the need for immigration. They just didn't want Catholics to show up, but if they did, they were willing to accept citizenship as long as they wait for 21 years, and they wanted to exclude them again from holding office. Right? So it's different. This time the nativists succeed in actually excluding a group of immigrants on the basis of race alone. The fact that they do it on the basis of race, of course, goes back to the 1790 Naturalization Act that we talked about. The fact that the Chinese are not eligible to vote because they're not eligible to be naturalized is, of course, a big part of the reason that the nativists are successful in this way. But nonetheless, I think Daniels uses the metaphor of a hinge. He says that Chinese migration is the hinge on which the door of exclusion begins to swing shut. So although the Chinese are the first group to be excluded on the basis of race alone, they are not the last. And by the 1920s, we'll be excluding all sorts of people based on race, or on that current conception of race. Okay? What we'll talk about, let's see, the final point, which we probably won't get to until Wednesday, which is the reason that they're able to do so. And it has a lot to do with the new economic and political environment in both in California and in the nation that obtains after the Civil War. And there is also a role of organized labor that we will touch on a little bit. The outline, we'll first start with the 19th century. We've sort of talked already about 19th century Chinese migration in general, but I'll recap that very briefly, making the point that the Chinese migrants to California are not coolies, even though they are constantly referred to as coolies by those who want to stop the Chinese immigration. Then I want to talk about the reception in California, both in the gold rush, the railroad, and the manufacturing era. These are essentially decades. The gold rush first, after the gold runs out, the railroad, and finally it'll be through the manufacturing sector, or rather the manufacturing period, which is the latest one. And then, again, probably not until next time we'll talk about the politics of the Chinese Exclusion Act. It has a lot to do with that waving of the bloody shirt issue that we mentioned. The Democratic Party is out of power in a big way at the end of the Civil War. They look very hard for a way to get back in. One of the ways they do it is to play towards labor. That's very natural for them. But the anti-Chinese story is one way that they get that they rehabilitate themselves, as it were. It's another way. It's one of the ways that they're able to peel support away from the Republicans. And then finally, the Republicans, after a very, very brief period of high-mindedness, finally capitulate and join the anti-Chinese bandwagon. At that point, it's pretty easy to pass the Chinese Exclusion Act. And we'll see how all that happens. Okay, so first, again, simple point just to remind us that when the Chinese first arrived, I think Mr. Coffey mentions that Governor McDougal in 1852 says that the Chinese are the most worthy classes of newly adopted citizens, to whom the climate and character of California are peculiarly suited. He even uses the word citizen here. There were some Chinese who were, in fact, naturalized, but these cases were returned often later. Remember, it's up to the states to do the naturalization. But in general, Chinese are not allowed to become citizens, and that's, of course, quite important. By 1877, this quote from Dennis Kearney, who is an Irish immigrant, is more in keeping with the mood of the times. Everything must be made subservient to the rights of labor. It must be done, even if we have to paralyze 9/10 of our factories. We intend to emancipate labor. Capitalists must succumb to the working men. I caution these men that people are already on the verge of starvation. The young people will rise in this anti-Chinese movement and deluge the city in blood, not entirely destroy the city. We shall show them that the days of the capitalists are over. Notice the tone here. Kearney is a demagogue. He's not exactly the mainstream, but he gets his way. But notice that what strikes you about this? Is this anti-Chinese? Yes. Yeah. It does. And it is called, in fact, Kearney's leader was called the California Working Men's Party. And in a way, there is a sort of socialist element to it, but at the same time, although this quote sort of makes it seem like it's, like it's mostly socialist and slightly anti-Chinese, I think in reality it's mostly anti-Chinese and somewhat socialist. The role that the Chinese play in the socialist story is kind of the same way. I mean, you could say that the Chinese are to the capitalists as Catholics are to the Pope, if you will. Remember when you read Morris or some of the other quotes that we saw, that the nativists, the anti-Catholic nativists, saw the Catholics as somehow pawns in the hands of these despotic popes and so forth. Here, the Chinese are tools of capitalists. The Chinese are using capitalists are using the Chinese in order to starve the people. That's the story that that Kearney is telling. But what's missing here is that while the Protestants often went out of their way to say that, as in the Protestant magazine, they do this distinction that the mass of the Catholic people are just innocent victims. They don't feel that way about the Chinese. There's a much bigger racial component to this. And so not only do they hate the capitalists, but they don't feel sorry for the Chinese. They hate the Chinese as well, at a visceral racial kind of way. It's also, as a sideline, McDougal, in 1852, was welcoming the Chinese, was also a signer of the California Constitution of 1870, which forbade both slavery and the migration of free blacks. Right? So he's not it's not all high-minded. The concept of being against racism doesn't exactly exist. It's one race at a time. I think made this point, and I'll just skip over it. We know the immigrants are not coolies. We also showed this slide before, but let's remind ourselves. In the 1860s, the Chinese are concentrated in the gold fields. By the 70s, we're talking about railroad construction, as well as, to some extent, work in the Central Valley. And it's by 1880, they're very concentrated in the cities. Still work in the Central Valley, they're still working in the railroads, but there's much more going on in the way of manufacturing in the city of San Francisco by 1880. Right. So these three phases, the gold rush, railroad, and manufacturing or industrial, also correspond to different geographical locations to some extent. And again, the point that although the Chinese are not a large segment of the population, they are a fairly significant segment of the working population, age 15 to 65. Right. Okay, let's turn now to the gold rush. The quote here is from Alexis de Tocqueville, who writes a very famous book called Democracy in America. He's often quoted because he says things that Americans like to hear, and this is one of them. The citizen of the United States is taught from infancy to rely upon his own exertions in order to resist the evils and the difficulties of life. He looks upon the social authority with an eye of mistrust and anxiety, and he claims its assistance only when he is unable to do without it. The same spirit pervades every act of social life. If a stoppage occurs in a thoroughfare and the circulation of vehicles is hindered, the neighbors immediately form themselves into a deliberative body, and this extemporaneous assembly gives rise to an executive power, which remedies the inconvenience before anybody has thought of recurring pre-existing authority superior to that of the persons immediately concerned. In the United States, associations are established to promote the public safety, commerce, industry, morality, and religion. There is no end which the human will despairs of attaining through the combined power of individuals united into a society. What de Tocqueville is, of course, getting at here is that Americans have at least in his view, a kind of gift for spontaneous organization. Right? They join lots of volunteer organizations and they form, ad hoc committees all the time. They delegate authority to themselves and they solve problems. Okay? The reason that's, I think, an interesting quote is from the 1830s, by the way, so it's contemporary to the period, is that something like that happened in the gold fields. When the gold rush began, there wasn't much in the way of government in California. It wasn't even a state at that point. But what happened in the gold fields was kind of a spontaneous piece of organization. The miners got together and they made rules about how you could stake a claim, how long you could leave a claim inactive before it reverted, before somebody else could just claim it. And they also, of course, made a rule that Chinese could not stake claims. Right? So here's where it gets interesting. And that also shows another of Tocqueville's criticisms of Americans at this time. And that is their blind faith in majority rule. The concept of the tyranny of the majority obviously is also present there in excluding the Chinese who were not consulted, who were not allowed to vote in the issue. But what's interesting, yes?
Do you think that there's the roots of common sense philosophy in that more so than the rule of majority rule?
Like common sense philosophy, I'm not sure I get where the...
Out of the Calvinist origins that come together as a collective, they could better see what God's will and...
Perhaps. I don't think Tocqueville saw it that way. I think he saw it as more of, not so much of the roots of Puritanism as an environmental thing, that there just isn't much government for them to rely on. But I think you raise an interesting point. What brings it about, I'll have to ponder that. But the thing that I did want to mention is that is interesting about this, and that sets a tone, which we'll see again in the other periods, is that it wasn't entirely optimal for the Chinese not to be able to hold claims. Right? The white miners wouldn't let them stake a claim, but they would let them buy a claim. And the reason for that is that that was good for the white miners. And that's the point that I want to make about it. The way the Chinese were treated was, as in one book, sorry, I've forgotten, but I'll tell you later, it's called The Indispensable Enemy. And that really describes succinctly how this works. Because there was always a rumor that there was more gold over the next hill. If you had to give up the claim that you had in order to go over the next hill, you hated that, right? You had to make this decision. I got this claim, it's not very good, but it's something. If I abandon it to go over the next hill, there's a rumor that there's more gold, well, I could wind up worse off. So the solution was to allow the Chinese miners to buy existing claims. And so they allowed the claims to be sold that way. Again, spontaneous organization and the concept of this indispensable enemy. Now, in this picture, I think it's a little bit ambiguous here about whether the Chinese and the non-Chinese are working together on this claim or not, or whether it's two separate claims. But this picture is not so ambiguous. It refers to, from 1869, it refers to several important incidents, and I think it, again, captures that indispensable enemy concept. Pacific chivalry, encouragement to Chinese immigration. The courts of justice are closed. The courts of justice are closed to Chinese. This refers to the reading, which I encourage you to do. There's a reading on the course calendar about an important court case. Extra taxes to Yellow Jackets refers to California's imposition of a foreign miners tax, which was only collected from Chinese. It was initially $20 per month, which was exorbitant, and it was later in 1852 reduced to $3. Thereafter, it became an important budget item. So here's again, that indispensable enemy. They're exploiting the Chinese, but with that miners tax. But at the same time, it becomes an important part of the state's revenue. So once again, that indispensable enemy concept. Let's take a minute to talk about it. This is Hall versus this is a U.S. Supreme Court decision. I'm sorry, California Supreme Court decision that closes the state courts to Chinese. All right, so the gold rush ends fairly quickly. It really ends as soon as the surface deposits of gold are exhausted and you can't pan anymore. As soon as it starts to take serious capital to mine, the days of walking around with a mule, finding a creek are over. But when the gold gives out, most miners either leave the state or they do something else. One of the things that they do is mine quartz or silver, mostly in Nevada. That is a distinct drop in status. Please remember that they become working men. But they also become at least loosely organized, and they're very successful at keeping the Chinese out of that business. They do the same way that the Irish did. Irish did to blacks. They get enough employed who simply refuse to work with the Chinese, and then it becomes the mine owner has to choose if he's going to hire all Chinese or all non-Chinese. And if he hires all Chinese, he's going to see a lot of violence and destruction. So they don't generally make